Hello from National Geographic Education. My name is Vivette Dukes, and this is Explorer Classroom. At National Geographic, we use the power of science, exploration, education, and storytelling to illuminate and protect the wonder of our world. Explorer Classroom connects students worldwide with our National Geographic Explorers for short lessons and time for your questions. Today, our explorer is none other than Dr. Maria Fadiman. Maria is an ethnobotanist, which means that she explores the relationships between people and plants. How cool is that? Maria has traveled the world to see how plants and people coexist. She shares these experiences with people of all ages, including speaking live on stage for audiences and teaching at Florida Atlantic University to future ethnobotanists and geographers. Today, she is going to tell us about a project that brought international teenagers together from Tibet, China, and the United States to create their own book about how to use their landscape and the important things they learned from their elders, the land, and from each other. Before we get into today's lesson, I'd like to take a moment to welcome our registered viewers who join us from around the globe. Special shout outs for today go to Cascadia Montessori School, French Creek Elementary School, shout out, Creekside High School, hello, Pond Cove Elementary School, hi there, Franklin Central School, welcome, Adelanto Elementary School District, hello, and all of our home schools out there. We are so thrilled to have you all here. And with that, let's get this Explorer Classroom started. It's time to turn it over to Maria to show us all about how young people can use and learn from the world around them. Take it away, Maria.
All right, thanks, Yvette. I am super excited to talk with all of you today. So I'm just going to share my screen, get my images up here. All right, so ethnobotany on top of the world. So we're going to talk about a super high place, Tibet. We're going to start with a lower place down in the jungles of the Amazon. So when I say I'm an ethnobotanist, people say, oh, you're an ethno. What? So ethnobotany is ethno, which is people, and botany, plants. So I am looking at the relationship between people and plants. This can take all kinds of forms. You can have fiber for food, construction, for medicine, and ritualistic uses. And sometimes people think, oh, for ritual, you have to be way out in the jungle. Like we use some plants for ritual here. At the end of October, we have a very specific holiday we use, and we have a plant. And it's round, and it's orange, and it's, what do you guys know? Right, it's a pumpkin. And then what do we do with it? Well, we carve it, and then we put a candle in it. And then we put it in front of our house, and everyone along the street has these pumpkins. That's pretty ritualistic. And if I said, you know what, this year I work in the jungle, so I am going to carve a snake and I'll use a zucchini. We don't do that. It has to be a pumpkin. So we're also very connected to plants in our culture here, very specific plants. And then there's some uses that are just hard to categorize. So I work in the rainforest, and often I will stay with families. And often these families will give me a little present. So one family gave me a banana, another time an egg, and then one family that I'd stayed with for a long time said, we have a really special present for you. Ooh, came out with a duck. Quack, quack, quack. Oh, wow, I really needed a duck. And so I said, gracias, and I took the duck. Now I had 8 hours to walk through the mud back to the biological station. And now I've got this flapping duck. And there's just no way. So Don Felipe, who was in the picture, he said, ah, and he took a leaf, and he took a vine, and he wrapped up that duck, and he hung it on the back of his backpack. So for 8 hours, I walked face to face with the duck, and the duck, But this is also ethnobotany. He's using plants to make things happen, and that is the duck ready to go on the journey. So when I first got to the rainforest, I was super scared because they said, okay, be careful of all the snakes. And there's scorpions, don't reach under anything. And spiders are just everywhere. And I don't like spiders. I appreciate the role they play in the ecosystem, nothing against spiders, So the first night, I walked to my bed and I lifted up my sleeping bag and took my flashlight and I looked to see that nothing was in there. And I got in and I made a calendar in my head with a big star on the day I was leaving. Because I thought, I think I hate it here. However, I began to learn about the forest and the animals and how it goes together and even the spiders. I fell in love with the rainforest. And I realized that it was the people who were teaching me their knowledge, that they're also a part of this ecosystem. Now, I was feeling much more comfortable and I was loving the forest. And it doesn't mean I still fell in love with everything there. So I would come across things like this. Oh, so if you have a spider and it's big and it's hairy, and for me it's just extra horrible, we call it what? Tarantula. Now, some people find this really beautiful. So I'm walking with these other researchers. We see this tarantula. So we all start to take pictures. And then someone says, you know, we need something for scale, something of a known dimension, a size we know. So when you put it next to the spider, we will know how big it is because maybe it looks bigger on the screen than it really is. So someone said, how about a pencil? We'll know the comparison. And so then the next question was, and someone asked me, they said, why don't you put the pencil next to the tarantula? And I said, why don't you put the pencil next to the tarantula? So we did this for a while, and finally I took the pencil and I threw it just near to her. And she came over and what? Pounced on that. Total pencil attack. And we all went, oh! And then we remembered we are supposed to be cool rainforest researchers. And so then we all took pictures. And then what do you think the next question was? Who's going to take the pencil back? So we all looked at each other. We're all conservationists. We all don't agree with littering. And we all just left the pencil right there and we walked out of the forest. So I don't advocate that. Some of the adventures you have in the rainforest. Okay, so now leaving the Amazon, we're now going to a really different place. We're going up to the highlands in Tibet. So we are working with a rural school out there called Matik. And this was started by another National Geographic Explorer, Losan, and her sister. So we're working with international high school students. So working with Tibetan, Chinese, and North American. And to do this work, you want to go up to the upper plateau. And to get way up there, the most common way to go up is on a motorcycle. Now, I haven't ridden a lot of motorcycles, and I was new to this culture, so I was trying to be respectful. So I was keeping distance from the man who was driving it. And I was seated far back, and the villagers are all standing around, and he said, no, get closer. So I scooch a little closer. He said, no, closer. Scooch a little closer. I said, put your arms around it. Okay, and I all cheered. And a man said, well, it's because you want your weight to be his weight when you're on some of these roads. And then I realized what he was talking about. I wouldn't even necessarily call this a road. This was the path that we motorcycled up. I was like, and I'm squeezing really, really tight, and I am just hanging on. And that's fine on the uphills. But then when we start to go downhill, he starts to elbow me back. I think, what? And I realize I am squashing him. So I try and scooch back and hang on to the back and hang on to the front. And I'm just hoping we make it up there. And then when we do, you're really on the top of the world. You just want to go, oh, it is just, you can't just see, and there's, oh, it's just green and hills and mountains. But you have to be careful because there are roaming yak that are up there. So yak, this is the animal husbandry that most people do up there. And they're mostly used for milk. And one of the things that they make out of the milk is butter. And they clearly are very appreciative of the animal from which this comes as they make a little butter yak on top. So doing the ethnobotany, really in this case, the Tibetan students, they are our teachers. And so when we're looking at uses, a big one that came up were edible plants, ones that people could eat. And so we're making a booklet of these plants. We're talking about their uses, and then I turn around and I start to see these in people's hair. And they're throwing them at each other, and they stick in their hair, and then they threw them at me, and they stuck in my hair. And I was like, all right, you guys, that's fun. Let's get back to work. And they said, this is work. We want to put this in the plant, in the book. These are throwing plants, and they stick. That's their use. And I said, okay. Not that we were always throwing, you just sometimes turn around and people would have a little nap time in the middle of a field. But they were working hard. And here we're collecting a plant, and it's a little hard to tell what kind of plant that is. It's one we have in many places in the United States. It's a dandelion. So when I grew up, and I'm assuming many of you, when you have a dandelion, you make a wish, and then you blow. Well, this is also what the Tibetans were doing, and this is what the Chinese were doing. So these students were all connecting to each other, but doing it through the plant world. So then we were doing plant identification, so looking at these scientific names of these plants. But if you notice, although we're working with high schoolers, there's some other people who are watching. So you can see a little bit of globalization with Mickey Mouse on there, a little interconnectedness of the world. But this was with teenagers, but it was also younger people who were watching. And I know many of you are younger than teenagers, and they were also becoming involved by being a part of this process. And really, the people who have the most knowledge are the elders. And so the idea of this project was for the Tibetans to record their own information. So they don't need someone like me to come in from the outside. So here we are, and they are doing this work themselves, interviewing the people who are knowledgeable about plants so that they can do this. And so what we ended up making was a trilingual booklet. So it was in Chinese, in Tibetan, and in English. And they were also drawing the plants. So they were making a booklet of the plants that they knew and the plants that their parents and their grandparents. So all these nationalities are working together to translate. We've got people speaking Chinese and Tibetan and English, so we can make this book that everybody, to which they can have access. And it all is a beautiful book, and it's great, and everybody's working together, but sometimes things are just hard. There was a lot of frustration as well. And in the end, it was really connecting them to place, to the environment. There are gorgeous flowers up there, and to people's cultural knowledge. And looking at knowledge, and we think of this as, very traditional, and she is very traditional, and they all were. And I was talking with this woman, and then I heard this boom, 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 and that was her ringtone. And so she reached into her dress and she pulled out her cell phone to answer the call. And I had an image, they're so traditional, they're so different. And they are, but they're also a lot like we are with many of the same devices. So even with that, a big thing in Tibet are monasteries. One thing you do is you make circles around. And I was doing these circles one day, and it started to rain. And I thought, well, maybe I get extra credit and the powers that be if I walk in the rain. But apparently that is not true, because the caretaker who of the monastery, he waved me in, come inside, hey, foreigner who doesn't know what to do. So I went inside, and he served me a big glass of yak milk. He had his prayer beads, and he's very traditional. This is the caretaker, very spiritual place. I'm looking around, and then I see this. I'm like, what? So he's got a TV. How can this be? And I'm he is the caretaker. He spends the day doing that, and then at night, comes in and watches a movie. So it was also my image of how people are different and other, and really, we're all different, and we all are doing things that are very similar and with access to some of the similar kinds of technology. So doing this in many ways is really for the next generation. Because often with elders, they have this knowledge of how to cure you with a medicinal plant. When they pass away, all of that knowledge might go with them. So if you're making this book, we're keeping this knowledge alive. And all of us, we're all empowered through understanding the land, our own culture, really ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you again, Maria, for being with us today. And a big thank you to all the students and teachers watching. We have a few announcements before we say goodbye. I know I don't want to go either. We could sit and talk with you about plants and ethnobotany all day. It's so very interesting. We do want you to know that there will be no Explorer Classroom events next week. And our final event of the season before winter break will be on Thursday, December 15th. We'll be joined by Explorer Meg Lauman, a conservation ecologist and arbonaut, which means she explores treetops. You won't want to miss this event, so be sure to register at natgeoed, all one word, .org/Explorer Classroom. You can request a chance to be featured on screen. Fellow teachers, we've also created a new interactive guide for you to share with your students to take them on a learning journey with each of our special guests. Find the Explorer Mindset in Action Guide and Teacher Edition linked on each event registration page. Have a great day, everyone. Stay curious, and remember, keep exploring.